Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. Infosys has sent legal notices to 3 newspapers, Times of India, Economic Times, part of the same family, and the Financial Express, asking them to withdraw from the digital media, to carry corrigendum and apologize for writing articles which were seen as detrimental to the company and its image. Now, there is a big bill, it's about 2,000 crores in damages from these 3 publications. There's already been a response. Bennett Coleman, the owner of Times of India and the Economic Times, has said that they stand by their stories. They are factual, balanced and fully substantiated by court, says Bennett Coleman, and nothing to be defensive about, said the company's legal head. Now, this obviously raises several larger questions, some of which have been discussed and some of which have not been discussed. One is, why is Infosys filing this suit? And I am joined now by 3 people who will help me decipher that. Ashok Bhattacharya, editor of Business Standard, the newspaper, and Business Standard has a story yesterday which says, this morning, which says, media darling Infosys fights bad press. Now, the headline itself should give you a sense on how Infosys has been viewed and perhaps how it will not be viewed in coming days. I'm also joined by Anant Rangaswamy, of the editor of Storyboard, the news magazine on television channel CNBC. He's written an article where he says that by suing the media, in some ways the toothpaste is out of the tube, and therefore this fundamentally alters the equations between Infosys and the rest of media, presumably. I'm also finally joined by Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, who himself a recipient of legal notices on his book Gas Wars by both Reliance factions, in obviously a clear case where an independent journalist and an investigative journalist has been to some extent subject to intimidation by corporate India. So, these are 3 different interesting angles. So, let's understand the larger issues here. What's your sense? I mean, I know you've talked about this case as something where the toothpaste being out of the tube, which means that fundamentally the bonhomie which existed between Infosys and the rest of media is not going to obviously be the same anymore. So, what's the premise for your stating facts from this perspective?
That's not what I meant by the toothpaste is coming with you. I meant that now it is over, and it's not going to stop. Both Infosys and the 3 newspapers, at this moment the Bennett Coleman newspapers, are in a position where they can't go back on their public statements. Now they have to necessarily go to court. Neither can afford to back down. And to me, there's a larger issue, Govind. It's not just about Infosys in the media. I think we're going to see a lot more defamation suits. I think the bonhomie has been for too long. Media has been complicit, so have corporates. And I think now there's no room for these cozy relationships. And there's also no room for irresponsible journalism. Both are there. And this is the new world. I think we're going to see Infosys is the first, but I think we're going to see more corporates hitting back at media. If media, speculates without facts to back them, or there are gray areas that they cross. I think we're going to see a lot more of this.
That's a very ominous statement as well in some ways, and let's discuss that too. Paranjoy, let me come to you. Is the Infosys legal case in some ways to you symptomatic of a larger, I don't know whether it's problems or a change in environment and the relationship between big companies and media?
First, Govind, I could not hear what my friend A.K. Bhattacharya and what Anant Rangaswamy said. The line has been very poor, so I might end up saying more or less what they said. So you'll have to excuse me for that. But I think corporate entities and those who head these prominent corporate entities, their skin has become a little too thin, in my opinion. There is something. If your facts are wrong, then you should go ahead and send a letter to the concerned publication or any kind of media outlet saying you've got your facts wrong. When it comes to opinions, and there is a certain amount of speculation whether A will leave the company or B will leave the company, and let's admit one point. Infosys has by and large got very, very favorable media coverage. Mr. Narayan Murthy and Infosys, by and large, the media has been very, very kind, and his PR, his corporate communications department couldn't have done a better job. Now that after Mr. Narayan Murthy comes back to head the company, and there is a spate of resignations and there are a whole lot of issues, it's inevitable that a high profile company like Infosys, the journalists would be writing about, and there would be inevitably a certain amount of speculation. Now, you could argue from the point of view of the company that this is bad for the morale of the employees because they're not sure whether their boss is going to be there tomorrow or day after. But I think at the end of the day, I think the corporates or those who head corporates have to realize that when you talk about reasonable restrictions on freedom of expression, Article 19(2) of the Constitution of India, here you're talking about deliberate intent to malign. And I don't think the media has done that. I think the media might have got it a little bit wrong here and there. You kind of speculate, and sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But I don't think there was any deliberate attempt to malign the image of a company or the image of an institution. So I think Infosys needs to be far more charitable towards what the media writes, and I think it's bound to happen. That there would be sometimes you get it a little right and sometimes you get it a little wrong. I mean, why? I mean, why are they trying to intimidate large publications like Times of India and Economic Times and Financial Express? I mean, by serving this kind of a legal notice, it basically seeks to intimidate not only these publications. You want to send out a message to others. You want to have a chilling effect on others that, look, you also don't mess around with us, because if you do anything that we don't approve, we're going to send you a legal notice, and even if we don't go to court, you'll have to reply. We'll make your life miserable. You'll have to spend your time. You'll have to spend your money in replying to us. So all of this, I think, is bad. It is a bad precedent that has been set.
Paranjoy, is this also forcing media to become more responsible? Because now you know that you go wrong and you misquote or you write stuff which could be defamatory, you could have a legal notice and not just, let's say, a correction that has to be published either in your newspaper or carried on your TV channel?
Sure, I agree that the media should be responsible. Journalists, they should do their due diligence, they should do their fact checking, they should try and get the other side of the story all the time. But journalists also work to short deadlines. If telephone calls are not returned, if email messages are not replied to, then they should specify. They should specifically say, yes, we tried to contact A, B, or C, and we didn't get a response. So I think journalists also need to be transparent and accountable in the way they gather information. And yes, they need to be responsible. I have no disagreement on that score.
AKB, let me ask you a question which sort of, I mean, trying to elicit an answer which is a little more in historical perspective. Now, this is the first time that Infosys is filing such a case. Now, there could be many reasons for this, but is it also because there is a certain disenchantment with the way media itself has begun to evolve or has evolved, or maybe the ownership of media has changed, and therefore the institution itself cannot be now trusted perhaps the way it was a decade ago?
No, I don't think that's the issue here. I think media has not always been very responsible. There is no doubt about it. Media has a lot to blame itself for not behaving correctly on many issues. The due diligence norms are not followed very often in many newspapers. So I think if somebody has not gone to court earlier in the past, it's mainly because of our legal system being so slow and takes years
Paranjoy, so a lot of comments coming in, mostly saying that, if you're a high-profile company, high-profile in media, then you better be prepared for things going wrong and the negative coverage, exactly as AKB has been saying. It also says, there's a comment which says that, interesting point, it takes me back to the Satyam episode. I remember media gushing over Ramalinga Raju, and like Infosys, they were made into demigods. Which is, there's no further suggestion about what could happen to Infosys, but this is a larger point about the way media treats people. So, Paranjoy, is this, do you think that this had to be done by an Infosys in this case so as to ensure that there was some order once again, because a lot of things had slipped into disorder, so to speak?
The media always exaggerates. The old saying is that, you wouldn't be a journalist if you didn't exaggerate. So, the same Harshad Mehta, he was lionized, he was made out to be the big bull and the greatest guy on earth, and then he was the biggest villain. The same story got repeated in the case of Ramalinga Raju. So typically, media lionizes individuals and then brings them down. But in the case of Infosys, I think they are protesting a little too much. Because by and large, the media has been very, very favorable, and I cannot think of too many negative stories written about Infosys. So I think that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point is to respond to what Mr. Anand was saying. I think it's about time defamation was decriminalized. It should be made a civil offense, as it is in many, many parts of the world. Secondly, when you put this huge figure, 2,000 crore, 1,000 crore, it kind of intimidates people. But if you have to move court, that's a different story altogether. Barring courts like the Kolkata High Court, where you have a flat fee of 50,000 rupees. Many courts, if you actually saying that somebody has defamed you for 100 crore, then you have to cough up 10% of that amount and deposit it with the court. So it's one thing to serve a legal notice sent by firms of lawyers, which have a very, very threatening tone. The idea is to intimidate, the idea is to have a chilling effect on others, and it's quite a separate story to be taken to court. So I can speak from my own example. Over the last 10 years, I've been the proud recipient of a series of legal notices from various individuals and companies, including the Sahara Group, both factions of the Reliance Group, Bennett Coleman Company Limited. The same story has got repeated over and over again. You send them a reply, after that nothing happens. Sometimes, no, they make your life miserable. Then they move court, and they move court to an obscure place. Take the case of what happened to Mr. Ponytail, and he sued Caravan magazine in Silchar. Those are, I think people are now seeing through this game. I think the Supreme Court reversed that particular order. So whereas I agree that journalists need to be responsible, they should check their facts, they should be fair, they should be balanced. Every attempt should be made to get all sides of a story. But at the same time, when you're a large company, when anybody who's in the public domain, it could be a politician, it could be a corporate captain, it could be a bureaucrat, it could be anybody. If you're in the public domain, then you have to accept criticism with a certain amount of grace. If people are wrong about facts, check their facts. But if they disagree with your opinion, or if their interpretation of the facts are different, it doesn't mean you come down with a with a hammer, with a ton of bricks and try and browbeat that person. I think that's also not done. We have to have a sense of balance.
We were talking. I think you seem to have taken the position that there's a certain degree of cleaning up which had to happen and perhaps will happen. Mohandas Pai, former director finance in Infosys, he felt, for instance, and he tweeted about it, and he said they should not have done it. It's bad form, right? So somewhere suggesting that basically a company should continue to maintain some level of cordial relationships. That you can manage some of these issues through back channel discussions, which all of us do in any case all the time. So in some ways, as you two have alluded, by bringing this whole battle out into the open, it's changed the dynamic somewhat. How do you see this going forward, Anand?
First, I'm not sure that they weren't attached to talk. That is a presumption which is made within one tweet. I believe that attempts were made to talk and they were dissatisfied with those conversations. That is one. Second is, like I said, Govind, I don't think this is only about Infosys and about these three newspapers. I think this is going to sort of become a little bigger, and all corporates are going to look at media. See, I think a lot of the fault lies with media for not publishing corrigendums. You have a front page accusation, and you have a left hand inside page half 10 column centimeter corrigendum. I mean, that's got to stop. Paranjoy said we get some right, we get some wrong. When you get them wrong, I think you've got to be man about it and say you were wrong. But as long as you take the high horse and say, this is it, we are always right. Any defamation suit is seen as an attack on the freedom of the press. That's a crazy situation. Why are we such holy cows? I mean, we could get it wrong. We could be irresponsible as much as other facets of society are. So, to me, I think Infosys is anger. I'm not saying that 2,000 crores doesn't matter, because finally the court has to decide whether it's 2,000 or 200 or two. It's just because they've asked for 2,000 does not mean if they win they get 2,000.
2,000 crores
It might get nothing.
Yeah, no, I mean 2,000 crores is either a very large number as we know it, or it also shows that inflation has really eaten in, and it maybe is not that large a sum anymore. Last words, if I will try and get AKP back, but let me get your last words in. Paranjoy, what lies ahead? I mean, while obviously we see more and more companies getting assertive and more companies taking this extreme step, what's the lesson on the other side for media? If companies indeed get assertive, then what should they be doing?
Okay. See, I agree with what Anand has said, that the retraction, the corrigendum, if you made a mistake, the correction needs to be given equal prominence as the original story. I agree entirely with that view, that you can't have banner headlines and 2 days later or 1 day later when you send it's wrong, you tuck away the rejoinder or the retraction or the corrigendum in some inside page. So I agree with him entirely that if you've got something wrong, you should be willing to accept your mistake and accept that mistake with the same prominence that you gave to the original story. Having said that, I think as far as Infosys is concerned, I'm surprised. I mean, why did it have to wait for Times of India to write 6 articles and Economic Times to write 9 articles and Financial Express to write whatever number of articles before you send them that legal notice? I'm quite surprised that it happened in this manner, because when you look back, I mean, look, this company, which is one of the biggest companies of its kind, it's I think the second biggest information technology company in the country, it's going through a period of transition. It's going through a period of restructuring. That there has been a lot of important changes at the top. It's been a somewhat troubled transition. So this is all what, I mean, the media loves this kind of a story because it believes that the readers of newspapers and the viewers of television channels, they want to know about all these things. But yes, you need to be responsible in the way you report. You have to be clear on where you've been able to get your facts right and when you haven't. But I think Infosys has overreacted, and at the end of the day, I think corporates need to realize that yes, they can be very aggressive, but they should be aggressive if the journalists or the media companies or the newspapers have got their facts wrong, and not just because you disagree with a particular point of view or a particular opinion. That's the point I want to make. The difference between interpretation of facts and facts themselves.
Right. Okay. Right. Paranjoy, thank you very much for that. I think so. We've got 3 points of view. All of you, I think, seem to feel that media seems to be needs to be a little more accountable in what it does. I think the feeling is that, and companies on the other hand too are well within their right to file legal notices if they feel aggrieved, as is the case. But of course, it's a much larger legal notice than normally what you might have seen. We also have to remember that the outcome of such legal notices and defamation suits is not something that ends in actual money being changed hands. So obviously most of them get resolved. So therefore, to that extent, is this a threat of some extent? And obviously, even if it is a threat, it does work, and which of course brings us to the larger question of intimidation, which we've addressed in some ways. That's all we have time for on this edition of Hangout. We're going to be back. This is not an issue that's going to go away in a hurry. Remember, Infosys has been a media darling, to use a term that's commonly used now for more than a decade and a half. Things are changing and they're not going to go away in a hurry. Thanks for watching.